Well, let's go to another kind of word that gets thrown around a lot, especially in the political spectrum today. And it's one that, I keep hearing, but honestly don't know all that much about. So hopefully you can kind of enlighten me and, folks who are watching and probably other folks in the room. So Sharia law, right? It's this phrase that's thrown around as this grand threat. In
Heads
some ways.
flying, hands
Right.
flying, yeah.
And so I'm kind of curious, like, first of all, what is Sharia law?
Yeah.
Is this something anyone should actually be concerned about? Can you explain and elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, and I'll just say this, that a lot of times it's sad because we have to distance ourselves as Muslims from terms that have been abused.
Yeah.
Because we don't have sufficient time to explain what those terms are. So, we're anti-jihad, but we're not anti-jihad. Jihad's a part of our religion. We're anti an extremist version of jihad.
Right.
But no, jihad is a part of our religion. Sharia is a part of our religion. Sharia, the linguistic meaning of Sharia is a path that leads to water. That's actually what Sharia means, a path that leads to water.
Okay.
And it does not refer to law in the state sense alone, but rather my prayer. And that's why when states criminalize Sharia, that literally means I can't pray anymore. Because my prayer is part of Sharia. It's part of my obeying divine legislation. Right? So Sharia is divine legislation. It's not synonymous with heads flying off and hands flying off and again, crazy things that happen around the world. Sharia there's a component of it that's government-based, and there's a component of it that's individual-based. So it's about your own personal practice. Now, if you're living in a non-Muslim country, Sharia means that it's part of your being a good Muslim, it's part of your being a good citizen, it's part of your practicing and maintaining identity, and so on and so forth. At the state level, at the government level, Sharia law is not synonymous with criminal law. And that's actually a very important distinction to make. What's criminal law is known as hudud, and hudud is the penal code of Islam and so on and so forth at a state level. And remember, Muhammad, peace be upon him, he functioned as a statesman in the last decade of his life, right? That part of Sharia, which is a very, very small part, very misunderstood, very, very much so taken out of context. I mean, everything from stoning to beheadings to cutting, all this stuff that's been that's been presented to the world in a horrific fashion due to the agendas that we see overseas. That is actually not Sharia law. That's criminal law in and of itself is a very small portion of it, right, at the state level, okay? And even at the time where, and again, if we read the Bible, we could find, stoning, we could find these types of things, right?
Very harsh code and things like that.
Right, very harsh punishments and things of that sort. In Islam, these laws were purely discretionary. So actually in the first 400 years of Islam, there's not a single, in the first 1,000 years of Islam, actually not 400 years, there's not a single incident from the time of the Prophet Muhammad onwards of a person being stoned because they got caught committing adultery. It didn't happen. So there is a stoning punishment that's there, but it's a discretionary punishment because the conditions to punish someone, to prosecute someone with stoning were so impossible that the law was pretty much discretionary, right? So even from a state perspective, even from the way that it was practiced over history, all right, it was not meant to be something that takes place right and left and so on and so forth. And what we find is when we see harsh punishments and things of that sort taking place overseas, when we see the horrible things that ISIS does, for example, there are people that would punish their mothers in public in gruesome ways and stuff like that because she did not give her allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, just horrible things that we see that take place under that whatever that is, that cancer.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with Sharia. So as a Muslim here in America, what Sharia is, to me, is literally just practicing my faith. Does it mean that I'm not able to abide by the laws of my land, or that I believe in a separate set of laws? Absolutely not, because as long as there's no contradiction between the laws of my land and my personal practice, as long as the laws of my land don't stop me from personally practicing my faith, then I'm actually obligated as a Muslim to obey those laws. I'm obligated. So it's actually, in a funny way, it's part of Sharia to obey the United States law as long as it's not stopping me from personally practicing my faith. And so that's what Sharia is. So this hysteria that's been created suddenly, that this small group of people, less than 1% of your population in the United States, are all secretly trying to push a different set of laws, and that there's a secret Muslim in the White House, that the president is Muslim and he's secretly trying to push a new set of laws, and that America in 20 years is going to be people being thrown off of buildings and hands being cut and people being beheaded in the streets and so on and so forth. It's completely ramping up. First of all, it's a culture war, which is very common here in the United States. We've had those. It's been done against various minorities. Second of all, it's complete nonsense, right? And it riles up a significant portion of the population, unfortunately, that are afraid. It capitalizes on their fears to fight a non-existent threat at the expense of the safety of that small Muslim community that exists here in the United States.
I think another word that comes up in that kind of cultural war that you've identified is this word taqiyya, and I think I'm not sure I'm saying it properly.
You're saying it right.
Okay, that somehow gives Muslims, kind of legal license to lie in order to advance the purposes of Islam.
Right.
So is that? My hunch is that that's not representative of, your understanding of Islam, or maybe this whole interview was a sham. But my hunch is
these guys, all these, everyone here,
right, is all complicit.
We're all in it,
right. I mean, my hunch is that that's not the case, because it just has a feeling to it of that same kind of fear-building sensibility. So, if someone were to pose that to you, or you to hear someone who heard that from a politician or someone who's speaking to issues of Islam in America, what's your response to
My response to that, number one, the concept of taqiyya, it's taken from, so 90% of the Muslim world is Sunni, which Sunni is basically synonymous with Orthodox, right?
Yeah.
So it's a concept that's taken from Shi'ism, which is, again, 90% of the Muslim world is not Shia. Number two, even then it's abused. So there are several problems with it. There's this concept that's taken from a sect of Islam and then portrayed to be a concept that exists in all of Islam. Okay. Number two, the concept itself is abused. So the idea that a Muslim can lie, can deceive others so that he can secretly advance the faith of Islam, it's not found anywhere in our faith tradition. Not in the Quran, not in the Sunnah, not in the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So I invite these people, like, can you find me where this taqiyya thing exists in our own books? We have Google now. You don't have to sit there and open the book and go through the pages of the Quran. Just Google it and try to find me. Yeah. Can you find this for me? Because it's not really there. So no, and the concept of lying to escape persecution. Okay, so someone's got a gun to your head and tells you to curse God or, curse Islam. Are you allowed to do that? Sure, to get yourself out of that situation you are. But there is no concept in Islam of lying to deceive people so that you can secretly make them Muslim, or you can secretly advance an agenda in Islam.
So while we're
and it does feed into that narrative, right? Again, the Hollywood narrative that the nice Muslim lady next door that invited you over for some good spicy food, she secretly, works with Al Qaeda, and she secretly works. And as
don't
soon
trust
as
those cookies.
Yeah. Don't. Oh my God, yeah.
And people might be missing out on some amazing cookies if they if they have that.
That would be a tragedy, wouldn't it?
It would.